I'd like to welcome Rabbi Fine and thank him for a huge amount of leadership and creativity that he's shown to the wider community during this past several months.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, pleasure to be here, actually, especially in Kinloss. I can see the wonderful things that Rabbi Lawrence and the people in Kinloss are doing. We really do. Good news travels fast during coronavirus. Thank God. Okay, so what I'd like to, I found a remix. I know that sounds a bit funny. Everyone knows the Kamsa and Bar Kamsa story, but not many people know that in the Medrash, the story is reported a little bit differently. And so we're going to do that together. If you ask me how I found this Medrash, it's not because I know all Midrashim, but I do know a commentary called the Yifei Einayim. If anyone's heard of the Yifei Einayim, allegedly that's where my surname comes from. That's what they say. If you say the word Yifei Einayim across several generations with a Lithuanian accent, they claim that you get fine. That's the family legend. So my grandfather's my grandfather's grandfather's grandfather allegedly was the Yifei Einayim. All right, you can take that or leave that. As with most of my family legends, they come from Grandpa Morris, who's unfortunately no longer with us. We've chosen to believe that one. But either way, if you want to know where a Gemara Bavli can be cross-referenced in the Medrash or in the Yerushalmi, then all you have to do is look at the Yifei Einayim. So I was learning the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. We're going to see that soon, please God. And this Yifei Einayim popped up in the commentaries at the back and said, look, have a look at the Medrash Eicha at this story. So I was a good and studious person. I had a look at this Medrash, and what I'm going to share with you today is my findings, or are my findings, about this Medrash, how the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa is told a little bit differently. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm just going to share my screen in a second. Hopefully we'll all have the Kinloss Lunch and Learn. Fantastic. Let's go back to Zoom. Share the screen. Kinloss Lunch and Learn. Fantastic. Okay, can anyone see that?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay, is it big enough for everyone? Yeah? Great. Okay, so I think in the world of Zoom, the absence of a no is presumed to be yes, right? So when normally if things don't work, you get told. If things work, then people seem to be a little bit quiet. That's okay. The truth is, last time we were with you, Kinloss Lunch and Learn, you were not. I hope you don't take this offensively, but you were not a quiet bunch. Certainly, some bigger culprits than others. So feel free to remain not a quiet bunch. Feel free to unmute yourselves, ask questions, whatever you want. Fine. The plan is basically as follows. Here we have the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. I'm sorry I haven't got the English there, but we're going to do it together. The truth is, to a certain extent, the English ruins this because we don't want things lost in translation. I want any assumptions made translation-wise. This is the story as reported in the Gemara. In Gittin, Nun Hammer base. Towards the bottom of the page, we have the remix, or the modernized, well, it's not quite a modernization, but it's the slightly different version of events that is here. This is the Medrash in Eicha Rabbah, Parsha Dalet. Beautiful thing, beautiful Medrash, but tells the story from a slightly different angle. Okay, so let's see if we can spot the difference between them. And I think we need to do this just to make sure, given today and yesterday in the news, I think we should just put it out there that there was no Russian collusion, neither with the version of the Gemara in Gittin, nor with regards to the Medrash either. I just want to make sure that this is free of any Russian interference. Baruch Hashem. So let's have a look. Says the Medrash. It says the Gemara in Gittin. I'm sorry if this is a bit of repetition for people, but you know what? We're suffering from, unfortunately, these symptoms now. Akamsa Bar Kamsa Charav Yerushalayim. Because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, Yerushalayim was destroyed. Now, again, we're going to home in on some details which are very important, such that when we get to the Medrash, when we play spot the difference, we can say, well, that was reported differently, that was reported differently. So if you have pen and paper, feel free to do so. Otherwise, let's just see, unmute yourselves when you spot a difference in the Medrash. So because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, Yerushalayim was destroyed. How so? Dahu Gavra, there was a fellow, Derachme Kamsa, whose friend was Kamsa, a Bal Devave Bar Kamsa, his enemy was Bar Kamsa. Okay? Avad Sudasa, he made a meal, he made a feast. Now, does anyone know where this feast took place? Anyone know where? Feel free to unmute or shout out. You don't have to. Anyone know where this feast took place? Okay, so it doesn't say, does it? Well, there's no, in the text it doesn't say. Presumably, I would have assumed it took place in Yerushalayim, right? If we're talking about Jerusalem being destroyed, it makes sense this happened in Yerushalayim. In the Gemara and Gittin, it doesn't say where it took place. Just FYI, over here it does. In the Medrash, it starts with Maise Shahaya Ba'adam Echad B'Yerushalayim She'asa Suda. So it was in Yerushalayim. Yeah, I'm not making any major differences between them. Just you see already there's a difference in terms of how things are described. Okay. By the way, when they do this in school, and my day they used to do this, where they, used to act out Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, right? And normally, where is the meal taking place? In what kind of venue? So when we acted out as kids, it was like a wedding hall, or they'd hired somewhere. We're going to see if that's true as well. We're going to see if that was true. Also, when we acted out as kids, we're used to thinking that this is, he was handing out invitations months beforehand, or 2 weeks beforehand or whatever, and he accidentally invited Bar Kamsa instead of Kamsa. Let's see if that's true in the Medrash as well. Either way, Avad Sudasa, just where it's highlighted, he made a meal. Amalei Lashamai, he says to his servant or his, helper, Zil Isili Kamsa, go and bring me Kamsa. Azil Isile Bar Kamsa, he goes and brings him Bar Kamsa. Okay, that we knew. Asa, so Bar Kamsa enters the room, and Ashkache, he finds Dahava Yosef. He finds that Hava Yosef, he was sitting there. He finds that he was sitting there. Okay? By the way, I'm told, I guess I'm told to mention this is the last one in the series, I believe. This is the last lunch and learn in the series, I believe, by the way. Just being told, so we'll remind everyone at the end. Anyway, either way, so he found that he was sitting there. In other words, Bar Kamsa was sitting there, and the Balasuda, the host, came in and found that Bar Kamsa was sitting there. Amarle, the host says to Bar Kamsa, Mechti, let's have a look. Hahu Gavra Bal Devave Dahu Gavrahu. This is where it gets pantomime-esque in not Chas v'Shalom, disrespect to the Gemara, but the phraseology. Mechti, let's see. This person is an enemy of this person. In other words, you are an enemy of mine. My bias hacha, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You are my enemy. You're not my friend. You're Bar Kamsa, not Kamsa. What are you doing here? My bias hacha, what are you doing? Kum puk. Kum means get up, puk means get out, leave. Amar lei, so he says to him, Hawal va'asai, since you're over here, and since I came, this is Bar Kamsa responding, since I came, Shavkan, leave me alone, allow me to remain at this meal, Vayahivna lach demei ma da'achilna v'shasina, and I will pay you what I have had to drink and what I've had to eat. Because I'll pay for my meal. Okay, that is that we know. That was the first thing. We're going to see a slight difference in the Medrash in terms of the order of bidding. I'll pay for my meal, says Bar Kamsa. Now, of course, we know what happens. Amar lei, the Balasuda responds, Lo, no way. Amar lei, so Bar Kamsa has another bid, has another go. He says, Yahivna lach, I'm willing to pay you, Demei palga de sudaseich. I'll pay for half the entire meal, half the entire feast. Now, again, in school, if this is presented as a wedding feast, that's quite an amount of money. We don't know what this is, but what feast it is, but that's it. Half the whole feast. That's quite a lot of money. Amar lei says the Balasuda back to Bar Kamsa, lo, no. By the way, he doesn't here say no and get out. He just says no. He's relying on his previous refrain. It sounds like in terms of being told to get out. Either way, Amar lei, he says to him, Yahivna lach demei kula de sudaseich. I'll pay for the entire meal. I'll pay for the entire meal. Unbelievable. I'll pay for the entire meal. Amar lei lo, no, I'm not interested. And that was that. Nakte biyade, he took him in his hands. V'ukmei v'afke, stood him up and threw him out. Right, now, if you're reading the Gemara literally here, it sounds like, by the way, the Bal HaSuda himself evicted Bar Kamsa from the meal, no? But it sounds like Nakte biyade, he took him in his hands, or with his hands. Either way, Amar, he says, and this is now Bar Kamsa saying to himself, Bar Kamsa says to himself, Ho'ol v'havu, since Yasvi Rabbanon, the rabbis were sitting at this meal, below Michubai, and they did not object, Shma mina kanichelu. You see that the rabbis were happy with what was going on, and therefore, Ezel Eichel Behu Kurtzebe Malka, I'm going to tell fibs to the ruling powers, who are, of course, the Romans. You see, the tradition of blaming rabbis, is an old tradition. It sounds like because the rabbis were there, it's interesting, he didn't blame the Balasuda, didn't blame anyone else, all the other guests. Since the rabbis were sitting there, they were happy, they didn't protest. Therefore, I'm going to tell fibs, I'm going to spread rumors to the Romans. Interesting. What happened? Azal, he went, Amalei LeKaisar, he says to Caesar, I don't know if this was the Caesar, but the ruling powers, Mardu Bach Yehudai. The Jews are rebelling. Interesting. The Jews are rebelling. Amarle. So now, if you were the Caesar or the ruling, governor, and you heard this phrase, "The Jews are rebelling," what would you say?
Taking up arms.
Pardon?
Taking up arms against.
But what would your response be? A Jew has come to tell you, the Roman governor, that the Jews are rebelling, planning to rebel.
I believe it.
You'd believe him.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Caesar was a little bit reticent. After all, remember, the Romans weren't looking for a gigantic fight at this point. Amarle Miyemar, who says? Who says? Prove it. So Amarle, Bar Kamsa responds, and this is presented as an immediate response. Shadar lehu kurbana. Do me a favor, go and send a korban to them. Go and send a korban. Chazis, go see ima karvin lei. See if they offer up your korban. See if they offer it up. Now, are Jews allowed to accept korbanos from other nations? You are? Yeah, you are. You are. No problem. Therefore, says the Bar Kamsa to the Roman governor, offer them, give a korban, give them an animal, they'll offer up on the Mizbeach. Fantastic. Fantastic. If they offer it up, they're not rebelling. If they refuse to offer it up, that will be a sign of them rebelling. It's an interesting symbol of rebellion, right? Not offering up a korban. Presumably the idea would be, or what Bar Kamsa is claiming, is that if they were planning on rebelling, they would not want the Romans to have some form of spiritual zechus of having offered up a korban. Sounds like that's the only line of reasoning. Anyway, Azal, so Bar Kamsa is entrusted with an animal, sounds like. Shada biyada, he's given an igla tilsa. Now, an igla tilsa is a special choice calf. Unbelievable, no? Special choice calf. It's actually used in the Gemara in Pesachim in reference to how Rav Yosef celebrated Shavuos. He would buy a special igla tilsa and he would eat it or whatever for Shavuos to celebrate Matan Torah. But an igla tilsa was like, not just any animal. This is like the, I don't know what we call the Ferrari of animals, so to speak. Bahadi to Ka'asi, while he was walking, while he was traveling from wherever the Roman garrison was or whatever. He was going to Yerushalayim. Shadar bei mumma. Interesting. He placed a mum. He blemished the animal. Where was that blemish? So the Bavli does tell all over here. It was either beniv sfasayim, which means the lips. The Amrilan, others said it was bedukim sveim, in the eyeball. Now, what is the significance of those two places? Either the lips or the eyeball? It's interesting. It depends how deep you want to go. At this point, a simple explanation would be that it's rather symbolic. The things that had gone wrong so far, while that the Barasuda had ejected Bar Kamsa from the meal. He told him publicly, get out. That was with the lips. And the rabbis were looking and didn't protest. That was with the eyes. Very symbolic. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says with regards to Eicha, that the order of Eicha is the Aleph base. However, the Ayin and the Pei are inverted. Normally the Ayin comes before the Pei, but the reverse. Why? Because the Meraglim, when they were sent the spies to give their survey about Eretz Yisrael, they didn't put they put their mouth before their eye, their peh before their ayin. In other words, they decided merosh from the beginning they were going to give a bad report despite what they saw, and that caused their eye, so to speak, to look at things badly. Caused their eye to look at things badly. Anyway, either way. Be that as it may, that's the maybe deep symbolic explanation. Lamaisa, the Gemara says a more practical spiritual one, and that is duchte de lididon havi mumma. These two places that for us are mums, right? But lididhu lav mummahu, but for others these are not mums. In other words, there are different halachas when it comes to a blemish that's acceptable for a Jewish animal. Always when I say Jewish animal, I don't mean he has a couple and tzitzis, etc. I mean owned by a Jew, offered by a Jew. Difference between that and a non-Jewish animal. There are certain, if you like, sensitivities that Jewish animals must have to be offered on the Mizbeach, but it doesn't apply to non-Jewish animals. So here, for example, this blemish that was placed in the eyeball or on the lips, whatever, these blemishes were not true. Would not invalidate non-Jewish karbanos, but would invalidate Jewish karbanos. Make sense? Everything clear? So Bar Kamsa did that on purpose. Had it been a blemish, which was a non-Jewish blemish, so to speak, then the Jews could have gone back to the Romans and say, hold on a second, you sent us a blemished animal, we can't offer it up. Right? But it wasn't. It was good for the non-Jews, but not good for the Jews. And therefore they have a quandary. Let's look at how that predicament plays out. Says the Gemara, Sava Rabbanan likruvei mishum shalom malchus. The rabbi said, you know what? Even though there's a certain risk that people won't know it's a non-Jewish animal, it didn't have made in Rome and made in Italy stamped on it, right? No one could tell whether it was given by the Romans or not. After all, Bar Kamsa was the one bringing it and he was Jewish. But nevertheless, let's offer it up because it's fine anyway. It's non-Jewish and Shalom Malchus. You can't get on the nerves of the ruling powers after all. Amalahu Reb Zechariah ben Avkulas. Now Reb Zechariah ben Avkulas is going to feature heavily in both the Medrash and the Gemara, right? In both versions of events. Reb Zechariah ben Avkulas says you can't offer it up. Because Yomru, people will say, people will say that you can offer a mum on the Mizbeach. You can't offer an animal with a blemish. Finish. Don't offer it up. Okay, so if you don't offer it up, what are you left with? What's plan B? So plan B, says the Gemara, is Savar Lemiktalei. Let's kill Bar Kamsa. Imagine? Let's kill him. This is a dangerous situation. If the Romans get wind of what's happened, they will kill some Jews, several Jews, whatever. Bar Kamsa is now a Rodef. Let's kill him. Delo lezo v'lema, so he doesn't go and tell the Romans. Now, Reb Zechariah ben Avkulas wasn't a fan of that idea either. Amlahu Reb Zechariah, he says back to them, no, you can't kill him. You know why? Yomru, they'll say, Matel mum bekodshim yaharek. Anyone who places a blemish in Karbonis, in Kodshim, they have to be killed. And we don't want people making that mistake in Halacha, so you can't kill them either. So what do you think happened? Well, they didn't offer it up. They didn't kill Bar Kamsa. He told the Romans, and we know what happened afterwards. Amar Rav Yochanan summarized this entire sad story of events. He says like this. He says, the tolerance is the way Rashi explains it. In other words, that he didn't rock the boat too much. That hechriva es beisenu, destroyed our home. The sarfa es heichalenu, burnt our palace, the higlisanu maratzenu, and caused the golus. Really interesting. So much to comment on in terms of the story and why it blames Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, and why it blames them at the beginning, and at the end it switched to Rav Zechar ben Avkulas, and why the rabbis indeed did not protest. We're not going to do all of that because we want to cross-compare. Just one interesting idea over here. He does say that his Anvasanuso of Rav Zechar ben Avkulas caused the Beis HaMikdash to be destroyed. That normally is translated as humility. Like Rashi translates it otherwise, just to keep, the Gemara makes sense. But the Vilna Gaon famously has the following explanation. Listen to this one. It's beautiful. He says the way it used to work is that the Sanhedrin, they would sit in a semicircle. And in that, so everyone could see each other. And in that semicircle, do you know the order of speaking? Do you know who got to speak first and who had to speak last? I don't know this.
The oldest, isn't it?
The oldest spoke first or last?
First.
First. Okay. So it's actually the other way around. In giving the final verdict, it could be the oldest did, but in arguing the the least senior spoke first. Why was that important? Because to promote impartiality, in other words, that people should feel free to express their opinions. Remember, these are experts, not random people. If you had the Av Sanhedrin, the most senior, speaking first, it might, it might impede others from giving their true opinions. Right? And therefore you had the lowest, so to speak, or the least senior speak first. Rabbi Zechar ben Avkulas was the most senior, but he held himself, he was humble. And therefore he sat himself at this juncture at the seat of the least senior, and he spoke up first. Once he spoke up first and gave these ideas about not killing Bar Kamsa, and before that not offering up the korban, no one else disagreed with him because he was the most senior. And here he'd expressed his opinion first, and that's what led to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Interesting, right? So the Vilna Gaon says it's because of his humility that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Okay, be that as it may, what we'd love to do, if you're able to, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourselves. If you're not able to because there's background noise or because there's something else going on, then no need to. You don't feel compelled to do so. But we are going to play a game of spot the difference here. We're going to see if we can name. I think we can get up to 10. Let's see how we can do. This is the Medrash's presentation of the same events. Okay? All right, so again, everyone who wants to unmute, feel free, but let's have a go. Says the Medrash, Ma'aseh Shahaya, there was an occurrence, there was an event. But Adam Echad b'Yerushalayim, with a certain person in Yerushalayim, that's difference number one, right? Location is stated. Sha'asa Su'uda, he made a feast. Amala ben Beisai, he says to his, it might be a child or it might be the helper at home. Lech go v'haveli kamtza rachmi. Go bring kamtza, my friend. Now, when is this happening? When is he bringing kamtza, his friend? So I think it's in the middle of the feast. It sounds like from the strict reading of the Gemara, this is in the middle of the feast. He's made the meal. He says to his kid, he notices Kamsa is not there. He says, go bring Kamsa. Azal, Aisile bar Kamsa sane. He accidentally brings, nowhere does it say in the text he does it accidentally, but whatever. He brings Kamsa, bar Kamsa, his enemy. A'al, so he comes in, Bar Kamsa, the Yashav, and he makes Yashav ben Archin. He makes a non-exuberant entrance. He quietly sits between the guests. A'al, A'al means that now the Balasuda comes in, as he has a look around. When during the functions, you go around the table, make sure everyone's okay. Ashkechei ben Aristaya. He finds Bar Kamsa sitting ben Aristaya. Aristaya, I assume, comes from a similar word, aristocracy. Because Bar Kamsa sat himself on the top table, we would say, right? Near the choshev guests. Right, that's what annoyed the Balasuda even more. Amar lo, so Balasuda says to Bar Kamsa, Atsana, you're my enemy. Vat yasib bego beisa, you're sitting in my house. Where is this taking place? In his house. Pardon?
In a hall.
Well, here it says in his house. It sounds like it's happening in his house. He had a big house. Kum puk, go get up, mi go beisa from my house. Get out from my house. Get out of my house. Amar lo, Bar Kamsa says back to him, Al tavai sheni. Don't embarrass me. Now, in the Gemara, Bar Kamsa never got up and said, don't embarrass me, right? He just said, since I'm here, leave me. Allow me to remain here. He was a Remainer. And va'ana yahiv lach demei de sudasa. And I will give you, I'll pay for what I've eaten. I pay for what I've eaten. Amar lo, the Balasuda says to him, late at Masuba, you're not eating here. No way. Amar lo, Bar Kamsa says back to him, Al tavai sheni, please don't embarrass me. V'ana, and I, Yosef, I will sit, v'leis ana achel v'shasi, and I won't even eat and drink. I won't eat and drink. Was that mentioned in the Bavli?
No, that's a difference as well.
That's a difference. Excellent. That's a difference, right? We don't have that. Notice, by the way, it goes up in order of bids. Sounds like a Jew, it's more difficult for a Jew to sit at a meal and not eat than it is for them to pay for a meal that they've been invited to freely. Right? I think most of us will agree. Anyway, either he says, I'll sit here and I won't eat and drink. I guess the point is that's embarrassing. To sit there and everyone else around you is eating and you're not. It shows you're not meant to be there. But at least it only shows the immediate table you're not meant to be there. You're not ejected or evicted in front of everyone. Amalo leisas masuba, leis at masuba, sorry, you're not, no, get out. Says Balasuda, get out. Amar leis, Bar Kamsa tries one last pitch. He says, Ana yahiv demei kol hadain sudasa. I'll pay for the entire meal. Any difference here?
Didn't he first offer to pay for half the meal?
Excellent. Very good. Very good. I can see it says Charlotte and David. So I'm going to, in my great honed Mossad powers, I'm going to assume that it's David and not Charlotte. Yeah?
Correct assumption.
Okay, good. One never knows nowadays. But anyway, yes, David, correct. So here it doesn't say that he offered to pay for half the meal. Interesting. Amale kum leich. He says, get up and get out. Get out. Finish. Enough. Listen to this. In the Gemara, when do we meet Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas? When's the first time we encounter Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas in the Gemara?
In the Basin.
In the Basin, fantastic. Right, now you're going to like this one, Brian. V'haya sham Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas. And look who was at the meal. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas was sitting at the meal. V'haisa sofek biyado limchos. Now there's two ways to read this. Either it means sofek biyado, he was doubtful whether to protest. What it probably does mean, haya sipek biyado limchos. That means he had the ability to protest to what was going on. In other words, the Balasuda would have listened to him had he kicked up a fuss. V'lo micha, but he did not kick up a fuss. Interesting, hey? Zechariah ben Avkulas was there.
Strikes me we've got at least two obvious problems here. I mean, first of all, why has Bar Kamsa deliberately gone to somewhere where he knew full well he wouldn't be welcome? And more to the point, having been a guest at the same event, why didn't Rabbi Zechariah then recuse himself when the matter came before Beis Din?
So hold on a second. We're going to see according to the Medrash, Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas was not involved in the Beis Din. I know, shocking, hey? We're going to see the Kohen made those decisions, not Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas. Okay. Anyway,
well, that's not what the Gemara says.
Correct. Just like the Gemara doesn't say Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas was at the meal. So you've got two different versions of what Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas is blamed for. You can see that very clearly at the end. Interesting, hey? But why did he go to the meal? Is anyone's guess. You know, it could be that he thought that the Balasuda wanted to make up with him. Don't know. No idea. Miyad nofikle. Right? Immediately he leaves. Amar Banafshe, or he was ejected, whatever, and he says to himself, Ilain Misbayan, all those guests, Yosef B'Shalvasan, they were sitting quietly. Ana Echel Kurtzen, I'm going to tell fibs to the ruling powers. What's the other difference here?
In the previous one, it was the rabbis who sat saying nothing, and one assumes there's not all rabbonim there.
Exactly, correct. Here, very good. In the Gemara, he blamed the rabbis. Here, he blamed the guests. Excellent. Ma'avad, what did he do? Halach Eitzel Shilton. He goes to the ruling powers. Amalo, he says, Ilain Karbanaya. These karbonis that mashalach liyudai lemikravinen, these karbonis that you send to the Jews to offer up, in an achlin, they eat them. They shecht your animals and eat them. They don't offer them up at all. And the karban uchraim b'chilufayu, and they offer other ones in their stead. Right? Major difference, right? This is an accusation straight out. In the Gemara, he says the Jews are rebelling. He says the ruling governor says, I don't think so. And then Bar Kamsa comes up with this test. According to the Medrash, the claim of Bar Kamsa was the Jews are eating your animals. They're not offering them up. In other words, the Romans for a while had been giving animals to the Jews to offer up on the Mizbech. Nazaf Bey, the Roman governor, wasn't very happy with his claim. Nazaf literally means snorted. He said, get lost, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I'm not buying that nonsense. They offer up our karbonis, leave me alone. So Bar Kamsa came back a second time, which we don't have in the Gemara, right? In other words, he had to leave and he came back at a different occasion. Amar Lo, he says Bar Kamsa, the same claim he repeats. Kol ilain karbanaya, all these karbonis that mashalach liyudai lemikravinu, the karbonis that you send to the Jews, in an achlin lahun, they eat them, a makarvin uchranayim b'chirufayu, and they offer other ones in their stead. V'im lo taminli, and if you don't believe me, shalach imi, go send with me chad ifraku, send an officer with me for karbanaya and various different animals. And you will know miyad immediately she'eni shakran, that I'm not lying. You'll know that I'm not lying. So what's the big difference here?
He's going with a witness.
Yes, exactly. There's a Roman officer that's traveling with Bar Kamsa. Okay? Also, it sounds like he's sending quite a few animals. Karbanaya, I think, is plural. It's not just one. So let's have a look. Adda Asya ba'archa, while they were traveling on the way, Damach Ifraku, the officer who was accompanying Bar Kamsa, he fell asleep. Kam hu belelia, so Bar Kamsa gets up at night, va'asa'an kulam bale mumin. While the officer was asleep, he makes the entire herd bale mumin beseser quietly. Interesting. By the way, the Medrash does not say where the mum were. Doesn't say in the eyes, the lips, nothing. Doesn't say. Just said it made bali mumin. Kevin Shara Osana Cohen. Once the Cohen saw that these animals that were being presented to him had mumin, Hikriv Uchranayan Tachdayan. He offered others in their stead. Now you can see the Roman officer is looking, so hold on, what's going on? The officer of the king turns around to the Kohen and he says, Lama leis out makriv ilain karbanaya. Why are you not offering our karbonis? Amalei, the Kohen says, Lamachar, I'm doing it tomorrow, don't worry. See, it's not just Israeli bureaucrats who put off that move. This is happening for years beforehand. Tomorrow, come back tomorrow, it'll be fine, don't worry. Anyway, Asa Yom Tlisa, it comes on the third day. In other words, sounds like he came back the next day, nothing happening. The third day he comes back below Karvan and he still didn't offer them up. Shalach v'amar lamalka, so he sent word to the king. He says, Ahu milsa, that matter, or those words that you die, that Jew said, Kushta kamar, he's telling the truth. He's telling the truth. the Jews are not offering up our karbanos. What's the major difference here? Well, there's no based in, there's no discussion, there's no Rav Zachar ben Avkulas saying, let's maybe kill Bar Kamsa. There's no, none of that. The Kohen made a decision not to offer the korban, and that was that. Miyad, immediately, the immediacy we don't see in the Gemara, by the way. Salik lemakdasha, the ruling power literally comes up or goes up to the Beis Hamikdash v'chriyo and destroys it. Hadar de Briasa Omrin, this is what the people say, as from here came the popular phrase, Ben Kamsa or Ben Bar Kamsa Charav Makdasha. Between Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, the Mikdash was destroyed. And
why is Kamsa condemned in all this? He's not even involved.
Yeah. So the Maharal talks about that. It's true. That is a question. Probably not necessarily for this. I mean, we are discussing Kamsa Bar Kamsa. He says he was part of a society. He's part. If there's a society in which you can have such sinas chinam like that, and he's part of that as well. Why him more than anyone else? This is a good question. Amar of Yosef. By the way, I once heard that those who say allegedly that Kamsa and Bar Kamsa may have been father and son. Ever heard that one before? It makes sense in the words. In which case, that's all the more reason to.
It sounds more likely that they are simply invented names to protect the innocent.
Well, we're not. I mean, we're quite happy not to protect anonymity. Excuse me. Rabbi Zachar ben Avkulas' identity is not protected. Although it's interesting, the Baal HaSuda is not named, nor is he blamed. Anyway, Amar Rav Yossi says, Am v'senusa Rabbi Zachar ben Avkulas sarfes ha'heichal. The Anova of Rabbi Zachar ben Avkulas burnt the Beis HaMikdash. That's interesting. When the Gemara here, when the Medrash, blames Rabbi Zachar ben Avkulas, what is it? What's he blaming him for?
Not intervening at the dinner.
Excellent. Yes, correct. Not intervening at the dinner. Very, very, very different, right? No?
Yeah, which actually makes a lot more sense.
Very, very, very different. So you've got over here, I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen if that's okay. What you've got over here is two different versions of where the blame should be laid. No? It's fascinating. One blames Rabbi Zachar ben Avkulas for the decision to not offer up the korban. That's the Gemara in and the Medrash says that Rabbi Zachar ben Avkulas is blamed not for failing to offer the korban, but actually failing to protest.
Although that was Bar Kamsa's original complaint, you may remember.
That was according to the Gemara, yes. According to the Medrash, it was, but the complaint in the Medrash, if not complaint, the Bar Kamsa's, a grievance in the Medrash was not that Reb Zachar ben Avkulas didn't complain. It was that none of the guests said anything.
But maybe he would take the view that the senior rabbi present should have been the one to lead the protest.
He may have, but that's not said in the Medrash. The Gemara says it's the rabbis. That's what Bar Kamsa was thinking, but the Medrash doesn't. Right? Very, very interesting. By the way, why did he not protest? So the Maharshal deals with this. The Maharshal says that either he thought, apparently according to the Medrash mistakenly, that his protest would do no good, right? Or he says maybe the rabbis didn't see the event. Interesting. He says maybe it was a big meal and they weren't privy to everything that was going on. Again, when we act this out in school, you think there's a massive hush that descends over the dining room or whatever, and everyone's now watching the spotlight, which is Bar Kamsa and the Baal HaSuda having an argument. Maybe, maybe not. But certainly it was enough for Bar Kamsa to say, I've been aggrieved. Right? Which, there's a lot of suspicion going on over here, if you think about it. The Baal HaSuda suspects Bar Kamsa of coming when he shouldn't have come. Bar Kamsa suspects everyone at the meal for, not getting up and saying anything. And the Romans eventually suspect the entire Jewish people of not offering up their karbonos. And there's a lot of lack of, that's the word is transparency, but the lack of giving the benefit of the doubt, 3 or 4 times in the story, and that leads to the Beis HaMikdash eventually being destroyed. Okay, so anyway, that is the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. I think, and again, I may be wrong, I assume most people here were familiar with the Gemara, the story we've heard, but I hope that for everyone here, the Medrash was new. I'm assuming that for everyone here, the Medrash was a new recounting of the events. Again, they may not be major differences. You know, maybe Rav Zachar ben Abkulas did both. I don't know. Maybe the Gemaras are referring to two separate, you know, causes, and we want to home in on both. That I don't know. That is beyond my pay grade. You know, to say why this one focused on this and this one focused on that, I don't know. What can I say? I'm not a big enough expert, but the differences certainly are there. I think they're quite striking. And you know, I guess just the take-home message, certainly on the judging favorably point, is that, you know, like in daily life, we do often come across points of friction. You know, we come across times where someone has done something which we think is a little bit bad or untowardly or a bit rude or, you know, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it does, you know, behoove us to kind of take a step back and think, you know what, maybe it was this, maybe it was that, maybe I should find out before accusing, and maybe I shouldn't suspect the other person so much. There's a lot of friction that would be removed if one took those steps a little bit beforehand. You know, a lot of not jumping to conclusions, a lot of not blaming these people are like this and these people are like this. And you know, of course he would say this or she would say this because, you know, this is what they said, this is what they're like. You know, I think we can sometimes in 3 weeks and 9 days take a little bit of a step back from that. All right, look, it's lovely to have joined you all virtually. Please God, you know, next year we should be in the Beis HaMikdash. Even this year we should be in the Beis HaMikdash. But I guess at second best, at least, you know, we'll hopefully join you live at some point in Kinloss for some, you know, proper lunch and live learning.